Author of several books, including award-winning short story collection Kleptomania, C.S. Chandrika is also a columnist involved in women's and human rights concerns. Author of Asura and Chaturanga, Anand Neelakantan is also a columnist, screenwriter, television personality and a motivational speaker. He has authored 7 fiction books in English and 1 in Malayalam. Sharanya Manivannan is a poet and author who is known for her books The High Priestess Never Marries and The Queen of Jasmine Country. They'll speak to senior journalist and author Kaveri Bamzai on patriarchy, politics and the power of writing.
And today we're going to talk about patriarchy, politics, and the power of writing. But really, it's all about your work essentially, because all of you are challenging accepted norms in a way. I'd like to begin with you, Sharanya, if I may, and talk about your work, especially the most recent. Your work on Andal. Forgive me for my pronunciations. I may be mistaken, but a woman who was so devoted to Vishnu, and yet as we often see, all our great poets and our great heroes are somewhat stripped of their eroticism and of their complexity. You don't shy away from that, so talk about that. And I think that is the best way to challenge patriarchy that there is.
Thank you for your very warm and generous introduction, Kaveri, and it's a real honor to be here with my co-panelists. Um, about the Queen of Jasmine Country, I think more than the eroticism, which is very much embedded in Kode Andal's work,
Yeah.
and therefore cannot really be denied. I think it's her humanity and the humanness of that longing that I felt was always elided when this figure was discussed, whether religiously or historically. And really, what my novel does is to look at that aspect of this very lonely teenager who's quite unlike anyone else around her in the small town that she lives in medieval Tamilaham. And as a woman living in the 21st century in the capital of what is now Tamil Nadu, it's not that different, so that long ago, how much more um, intense that lack of connection and that lack of seeing yourself um, in others as well as accepted by society, how painful that must have been. And that's, to me, that's clearly what drove her toward such an intense form of devotion, because in that devotion she was able to express herself fully and be the the most passionate and grandest version of herself. So I do definitely see my novel as a challenge to patriarchy on many levels, including the level of caste.
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Certainly, talk a little about that.
Well, um, the Alvars, the Bhakti poets in whose pantheon Andal belongs, um, like many other Bhakti traditions, has come under the umbrella of Brahminical
Yeah.
Hinduism, and sometimes there are different kinds of illusions that happen within that, and that may be to do with the poet saints themselves, or it may be to do with um, the way religion is practiced and the lack of inclusivity in the same. So, one deliberate choice I made as I wrote um, was to give Kodayandal a mother of an indeterminate caste background, and to ensure that the most influential people in her life, other than her father, who himself was a poet and taught her how to read and to write,
Right.
were also women of non-upper caste backgrounds.
Hmm.
Um, and this was a bit of a challenge because, on the one hand, I didn't just want to take an iconoclastic approach, which I think can sometimes be very easy to do.
Hmm.
I didn't want to take away from certain facts of her background, and what her upbringing would have been like. But I truly believe that throughout the centuries, there have always been people who have been um, subversive, rebellious in their own ways. We won't know who most of them are,
Yeah.
because most of them would not have been recorded
Yeah.
in history, and many of them need not have done, need not have made significant contributions in terms of literature or politics,
Right.
or any of those fields, but within their lives they must have been. And so I created a Kode who is, and Kode, of course, is her given name, the name she
Yeah.
knew herself by.
Yeah.
So I created a Kode who was within certain confines, and challenged them with what she could have known based on um, the era of history that she was in, the kind of exposure she could have had. She's certainly not a 21st century millennial, does
Mhm.
not have woke language,
Mhm.
is not radicalized in certain ways, which we now accept as, as sort of, this is what a feminist looks like.
Hmm.
So, yes, so I think I've been going on for a while, and I think might be time to ask one of my
No, it's
co-panelists.
no, it's in fact wonderful because when you talk about what a feminist looks like, Chandrika, what does a feminist look like? Because when you went to the villages and you talked about sexuality to women in the villages, you found that they were quite open about it. And we have this notion that, oh, there's a certain kind of urban sexuality and a certain kind of rural sexuality, and there's a lot of self censorship that happens on the part of women, I feel, and I think you agree with that, in the urban setting. Talk a bit about that. So what does a feminist look like? What does sexuality and women accepting their sexuality, what does it look like?
Huh. It's a kind of tricky question. Uh, First of all, let me correct you that I'm not a trained botanist. I am.
Okay, you studied botany.
Yeah, I did a graduation in botany, but my PhD is in gender and theatre.
Theater, okay.
Okay, so um, I would like to uh, respond to your question that women are so different. Women are not a homogeneous category. So sexualities are also different.
Right.
But we know the patriarchy also is different. It is not a common umbrella,
Hmm.
actually. Uh, I was thinking that it would be good if we could call it as patriarchies,
Hmm.
because first of all, the women's movement started in US in 19th century, asking for voting rights.
Yeah.
Then the patriarchy gave voting rights for white women only
Hmm.
after a lot of agitations.
Hmm.
Then that Sojourn Truth asked that question that ain't I a woman?
Yeah.
Then suddenly uh, uh, we could know that there are different kind of patriarchies and there are different kind of women. So I think uh, racist patriarchy, then a capitalist patriarchy, sexist patriarchy. In Indian context, it is Brahminic patriarchy, or else caste patriarchy. All kinds of patriarchy we can label it. It's very complex. So the sexuality of women is also the construct of sexuality, I would say, is very very heterogeneous in feeling or experience. So breaking that construct is something difficult for women who got into the clutches of patriarchal control.
Hmm.
So So we can tell that all women are the same in terms of their biological
Right.
kind of reality.
Hmm.
But the feeling of or experience of oppression is different.
Right.
The upper caste women feel or experience their body is totally different from the lower caste or tribal or other women from the marginalized sect
Right.
of society. So I would say that body experience and sexuality experience and the responses towards it is totally different, unique for every person, every woman. It is unique.
Right.
Um, but the control over their body or sexuality, uh, then women are challenging this control and this kind of restrictions in different forms. In Kerala, in 19th century, the lower caste women from Chanar community, Hindu Chanar community, made a huge, big agitation, struggle for almost 5 decades. That is known as Melmund Samaram or Chanar Lahla, or this, yeah, Melmund Samaram. Melmund Samaram, I would say it is Melmund Samaram because they challenged the notion of the dress code
Right.
that imposed by the upper caste or
Right.
Savarna. Caste is patriarchy. So these women asked for Melmundu uh, because the upper caste women were wearing this Melmundu.
Right.
These lower caste women were not allowed to wear this Melmundu. So,
Right.
the caste patriarchy actually controlled women's body in different ways.
Right.
So these women asked for their rights, or they were asserting their body rights and their desire for their representing their body and this dress code and everything. In fact, sexuality and their all kinds of desires are there. Even aesthetic sense of yeah, presenting themselves
Right.
also was there.
Right.
So I would say that it's all different.
Quite fascinating. Anand, may I bring you in here as our token mailman? Not token, but I'm glad. Normally it's manils, but I'm glad here that the women are outnumbering you. But Anand, men are equally victims of patriarchy, aren't they? And I think your work has actually been, in a way, subverting this kind of patriarchy, isn't it?
I agree with Ms. Chandrika in what she said. It is all different experience for different communities in different eras.
Hmm.
Men, any social system, like it is like saying, take for example the caste system, which I have extensively written in my work.
Hmm.
The upper caste also are a victim of this system. It is totally different from, because they form like any fundamentalism.
Right.
It is, the fundamentalists also are a victim of it.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Exactly.
Who rebels? Just imagine. It's a this thing of imagination. Who will be the one? Say you are living in 19th century in a very casteist, openly casteist society or openly patriarchal society. Who will be the rebel? If you are a good guy in the sense you don't have the courage.
Hmm.
You are morally right, but you have been trained like this.
Hmm.
You are not a bad person. You are trained like this. It is only the rebel who will rebel against it. The normal people won't rebel. So in the same case, when we are living now, we don't know when we judge it the previous era, so many bad things would have happened, whether it's for males or females, castes or otherwise. The entire society is taken in ransom by a certain group of people.
Hmm.
And there have been rebellions against that. It is the people who actually have the courage to rebel, or actually they don't want to conform to certain things that they rebel. So just like that you said, men are also victims of patriarchy in many societies.
Hmm.
They won't be able to many a times what happened for many centuries, India had, is there a country more blessed than India geographically?
Hmm.
Let me drive my point. It may look, I'm going somewhere else, but I'm
Hmm.
trying to bring some point. It has perennial rivers. It has a very good climate
Hmm.
compared to any European land or anything. But what we did was we kept away from medieval period onwards half of the population, women inside, without allowing them to contribute much. Many places they were not allowed to study also, irrespective of their caste. Even among the higher caste also, slowly the women became illiterate. Uh, and then they removed 90% of the population, 95% of the population also from studying anything. So who suffered? The entire population suffered. It's not that just one group of people suffered. Everyone suffered, including the people who suppressed.
Right.
Same is the case with patriarchy. So when even some invasion come, we talk about invasions happening as if something it came out of the blue. Why? Because even though you have got say 10 crore population at that time, 85 crore of the population, I mean 85% of the population have neither the means nor the skills to even fight. Because only a certain caste can fight.
Hmm.
Only a certain caste can learn. Only men of that certain caste can learn. So what we did, an advantage, what India had geographically, because of various religious or other reasons or fundamentalist reason, we totally messed it up.
Hmm.
And it took almost perhaps the beginning of Bengal Renaissance and the last 100 years social reforms to make us somewhat human,
Hmm.
if I may use that, because this is not the term which I used. This in Kerala, when the social reform started, V.T. Bhattacharya had one of the social reformers. It's not that he reformed the entire country or anything, but means entire society or anything. He was more concerned about the plight of the Nambudris and Nambudri women. He was the one who brought Nambudri women to the front, and his slogan was to make a human out of a Brahmin. Nambudriya Manishinaaka, to make a human out of a Brahmin. So in his writing also he is telling the men equally are the victims of patriarchy,
Hmm.
especially the social systems which developed. I am telling from the other side of what Ms. Chandrika was telling. In the census they did in 1920s and 30s, they found out that except for the few members in the so-called even upper caste, forget the other caste, though supposed to be the upper caste who had kept the entire knowledge with them or so-called knowledge with them, even among them, only 30% were literate. We are talking about 100% literacy of Kerala. Only 30% of these people were literate, and the rest were living in ignorance. And the only knowledge was how to maintain this caste hierarchy. Nothing else was there. So it took a series of reforms from various communities to bring this up to the level of social indices we are seeing in states like Kerala now. And in Tamil Nadu, it went to a total rebellion. In Kerala, it was more non-violent, more of a internal social reform from each community. Each community had its own enlightened leaders. So without making others as an enemy, it was done. That social experiment was done,
Right.
in which it was many of the what you call women also. When the entire society progresses, the literacy
Women
rate went up, and many of the social indices went up. It doesn't mean that it has become perfect, but when compared to many other societies in India, it has achieved some sort of equality because of the social reforms of the last 100 years, which was an integrated approach, irrespective. And there have been a lot of negatives of it also, which is another discussion. But men has been a victim of patriarchy just as much as his women were. And if religion is used as a tool for oppressing women, it is the most religious of the women who will be the victims. So you can say in different level, the so-called upper caste women had suffered more. As far as in this particular, they might be well off perhaps financially, but as far as freedom and other things are concerned, in this kind of patriarchal societies, because religion is used to have this propagate the patriarchy in this kind of society.
Chandrika, what do you say to this?
It is debatable because in Kerala Renaissance movement, there were a lot of women from all walks of life. So because Muslim women were there, and Dalit women and other Irava, Parvati Ayyappan and all were um, campaigning for kind of love is the basis of marriage.
Right.
That kind of notion were spread all over the discussions in the Renaissance movement under the leadership of women and the education. V.T. Bhattacharya and other Nambudiri revolutionary men discussed about the women's education for a kind of reformation in the community for the sake of educated men and their family and their kind of reform kind of wife and children. But women of that community or other communities discussed and raised the question about education, that it is for their self-development and income and a kind of mobility, all kinds of citizenship kind of rights. That was the difference between the men's question about women's education and the women's question about raised by women is different.
Right.
So, I would say the freedom, it is different for this forward caste women and backward caste women and minority women. It is different, but this kind of threefold or fourfold kind of exploitation and oppression and suppression experienced by this all these downtrodden caste and minority women and this Kisha women, tribal women, and nowadays we are raising the issue of transgender women also, transgenders also.
Sharanya, may I just bring in Sharanya here? Sharanya, why do we find it so difficult to talk about love? Anand also mentioned the idea of love. Why do we find it so difficult to talk about love and so easy to talk about hatred and so easy to talk in those terms?
Because love would just break down all of these societal constructs. If you challenge the hierarchy through the choices you make in your personal life, and enough people do this, you will not have caste, you will not have religious fundamentalism. There are just so many ways in which society would change for the better, or at least that's how we imagine it to be. So I do think that love as a radical force, as Chandrika ma'am just mentioned, love being the basis of political agitation, is a very important way in which to approach these things. It's not the only way. It doesn't mean that other ways are not right, but this is vital. And I'm so glad that it's come up in this conversation.
Anand, I want to develop this idea further. All throughout, even with your heroes, say Ravan. I mean, in a way, he was motivated by love. It may be a different kind of love, maybe bordering on obsession. But is this the most powerful force that drives men and women towards and away from each other?
It's natural, no? It is something of what is of nature. So you cannot avoid that.
Yet, why do we not have that vocabulary, and why do we not talk about it as much as we should?
We always talked about that, no? We always talked about Kama is one of the most important Purusharthas if we go by religion itself. But later it got hijacked.
Yeah.
And what happened was,
draped in Victorian prudery and,
before that itself it had already come. Now we cannot, Victorian era created a lot of what we consider now as morality here
Yeah.
is Victorian, which many people confuse as Indian culture and all
Yeah.
those things. There is no one Indian culture. There are multiple
Yeah.
Indian cultures. But at least this was one of the. If you go to Puranas and all, you find perhaps just imagine you cannot live like Kunti now. Can we?
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of sexual freedom even now the society has not given, or Shakuntala, or that matter. That is a different discussion altogether.
Hmm.
But now what happened was, right from the age when the child marriage started, it all starts from the insecurity complex of the male, that it is their duty to protect, it is their duty to marry off the daughters at the age of 11 or 12. We came from that almost last 100 years ago only, almost 1,500 years ago, this had started, the child marriages and other things had started. Widowhood, the concept of widowhood, the concept of purity, all these things are a medieval era construct from India. Like most of the world which was in darkness, India also went to darkness. And these all were the things which the social reformers, whether they were male or female, right from Savitribai Phule to many other reformers, to Ambedkar, to Gandhi, to many other reformers who fought against all these things over the years during Bengal Renaissance and all. So at least in urban area, we have somewhat come out of it. Actually, if you see, when you compare with, it might be a wrong comparison, but it was funny a few weeks before, people were celebrating that one woman has become the vice president of USA. Whereas in India, right from how many years we have been having, 50 years, 70, 60 years back, we elected a women prime minister. We had UN Secretary, the Vijayalakshmi Pandit was there. We had Supreme Court justices as women. And not only just India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. That doesn't mean here women are more empowered than they are in US. But even a country like US, it takes so much time to come to that stage. So it is very difficult to put anything on India, saying that anything you cannot give very simple definition. This is a very complicated country. So just as she said, only by love, propagating love, you cannot break down all these things. That just becomes one tool. Anything you talk about our country, the opposite also is true.
It's true.
Totally true. Opposite also is true.
Chandrika, talk a little about the idea of self-censorship here. Why are we so reluctant to talk about certain things, to write about certain things, to express certain things? Even women, women themselves are afraid to talk about things that affect them.
Yeah, in writing of women, uh, it is said that women always write about their family, their married life, and something like that. That is a kind of a typical accusation against
Yeah,
writing.
they can only write about what they know, their domestic sphere. Yeah.
Yeah, but we know it is not it is not right. Women always write about politics, society, all kinds of environment. Every kind of theme is taken by women, and they are very much powerful in expressing their concerns about all these different themes. But if women uh, uh, become dare enough to write their body and sexuality, then this kind of censorship will come all of a sudden. Uh, at the very beginning, from the family itself, uh, they will make issues.
Mm.
Then this woman will make self-censorship at first,
Mm.
so that she can write some kind of words even. We know the gender and language is a big issue in the discourse of women's writing. As a creative writer, I know that I have written two very kind of radical kind of books.
Mm.
One is Endya Pachakarimbe. It's
Mm.
all about love.
Mm.
It's all about love and love experience of a woman.
Mm.
Uh, and one is Pranaya Kama Sutram. It is it is, yeah, I definitely wanted to challenge the Valsyayana Kama Sutra. It's from the point of view of a kind of Brahmanic patriarchal kind of perspective in that Valsyayana's Kama Sutra. So I wrote Pranaya Kama Sutra, Kama or this Pranaya is the basis. Pranayam is the basis of the sexual kind of interaction. Every kind of sexual pleasure is based on the love in between the lovers, whether it is men or women or transgender, all kinds of
All kinds of love, yeah.
yeah. Um, uh, but I really face a lot of issues when I decided to write about my sexual experience. That is it's a kind of autobiographical work. But it is not autobiography, it's fiction. I accepted that kind of different forms. Poetry is there, prose is there, conversation like genre is there, and essay is there. All kinds of, because otherwise it is very difficult to express my sexual experience, especially in a patriarchal society. The language is very double-edged sword. It can be slipped into a bad kind of or this vulgar kind of depiction, vulgar kind of portrayal or usage. So we should be very conscious about this usage of words or sentences or phrases when we talk about sex or sexual experience. Women have no words, I would say, and women have not that much liberated kind of sexual experience as well, I would say. Uh, First of all, women should liberate herself. She should know her body, and she should know the kind of uh, love which is which gives confidence to her to express everything in a relationship. That kind of experience and that kind of communication methods and that kind of language, all kinds of freedom that's needed for writing a particular theme in the literature. Uh, but women themselves, as I said earlier, women themselves make censorship
Right.
because they are concerned about their husbands or uh, parents or daughters or sons, like the relatives. And then they are concerned about the religious kind of patrons, and then they are concerned about the whole society. Uh, the notion of good woman and this loose
Bad
woman or
woman.
bad woman, they want to, yeah, it is their choice to not become the category of bad woman. But all radical women writers like our Kamala Surya
Yeah.
and many other women writers all over the
You
world.
yourself have written about Saraswati Amma as well.
Yeah, Saraswati Amma.
Yeah.
Saraswati Amma was a writer who challenged the patriarchy very directly, and she depicted women characters with brain. See, until then, all men wrote about women characters with their illusions and that kind of yeah, hallucinations, I would say.
Yeah. Sharanya, may I bring you in here and develop this point further? This whole idea that women actually are still looking for the vocabulary with which to express themselves fully. Would you say that?
I think I have a slight difference of opinion, which is that while that is true
Hmm.
on many individual levels, when we look at how literature has been developing at large
Hmm.
in this part of the world in different languages, we can see that that has begun to change.
Hmm.
But there is a greater problem that we are facing, not just in this country, but in many around the
Hmm.
world. And we need to look at it. Um, we need to look at self censorship and all kinds of censorship
Hmm.
in light of that. We need to think about what it means that governments are becoming more and more authoritarian
Hmm.
and shutting down dissent of different kinds. Um, in India, if you look at the cases that we've heard of, and there are surely more
Hmm.
that we're not hearing about, of how people are being punished for their views, journalists, poets, different kinds of artists, filmmakers. This is what we need to be worried about. The question of, are we as a society accepting enough of sexuality, etc.? That's really a sub question, I feel, to what this larger political agenda has been doing to all of us. And I think that that ties back into what we were discussing earlier about how patriarchy affects everybody. Patriarchy is very much a part um, of governments that control populations. There are certain foundational ideas about who, do our bodies belong to ourselves? Do our choices belong to ourselves? In North India, there is now an ordinance against interfaith marriage.
Right.
You know? So,
Unprecedented.
and so exactly. So, I think it's very important to look at um, the larger context of the time and place that we are working in, because we are not in cocoons, we're not working in isolation, we are working within a situation which is punishing everybody, which will ultimately punish everybody, even people who don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, so I think the conversation is actually broader than than books per se.
I agree. In a way, it's the Hindutva project which is redefining the way we live, the way we are, who gets to be an Indian as well. I mean, it's not just a question of citizenship, but it's also a question of what kind of citizen does this project want you to be. And it redefines the family as well. How does it treat the man, Anand? Because along with this Hindutva project is a very different kind of masculinity that emerges as well, which is perhaps more aggressive than we
So
have.
Hindutva is a latecomer in the party. We have to address the elephant in the room too. We talk about Brahminical patriarchy. We talk about half of. We don't talk much about the women in Parda, do we? I'm not talking the Hindutva line. I keep writing against it in New Indian Express itself
Yeah.
many a times. But we are not addressing the elephant in the room. We are talking about we are afraid. What is that which world over people are afraid of writing about? We can still, though the space is shrinking, we can still criticize anybody in the country even now. Can we criticize certain other things anywhere in the world?
Are you referring specifically to Islam?
I am referring specifically to Islam as of now, but there are lots of other religions also which are imitating it.
Hmm. No,
So
but my
a
question was,
society doesn't live in isolation, because this is like if someone gets away with it, someone gets away with a small section of people gets away threatening violence, that you cannot talk about us, you cannot say about us, others will imitate that,
hmm,
and this becomes a vicious cycle. So when we address things, we have to address it as a whole, and not this is and not beat the dead horse, saying that This is anything and everything, it ends up in Brahminical patriarchy, which we have been writing, all of us have been writing against for many last 100 years perhaps.
But Anand, the question is when the majority starts to behave like a minority under
It is
threat,
bad, it is
that
bad.
becomes an issue.
But the problem is we should not, we should learn to call a spade a spade.
Hmm.
That has to be irrespective of whether they are minority or majority or whatever it is. While criticizing all the ill effects of Brahminical patriarchy, which we have been doing, our work itself is proof for that. All the books we have written, all we have been writing so far, we should not tremble or shiver or patronize by ignoring it as if it doesn't exist, because it is not a minor minority. It is around 30 crore people, of which 50% is women. So we are talking about 15 crore people. So while talking about, which is more than the number of Dalits in India, to really see. So if they also, they are a victim of patriarchy, why are we not also including them? Aren't we doing injustice to them also while talking about? While condemning the love jihad ordinance, which is idiotic, and I'll be writing about it also in my own this thing, we should not be scared of calling a spade, whether it is done by a Brahmin or whether it is done by a Dalit or a Muslim or a Christian. If it is wrong, it is wrong. If it's
Yeah,
done by
I don't think either of the two ladies here, the two women here, are going to disagree with that. Chandrika?
This Hindutva patriarchy is the most dangerous kind of power that the whole women in the country are facing now, because the food, the dress code, the language, the education, marriage, everything related to women's life is under threat under this rule of Hindutva patriarchy, or this is a fascist kind of
Hindutva patriarchy, which is asking the Muslim women to wear a parda. Patriarchy is a patriarchy, whether it is Hindu or a Muslim.
That's why
Hindutva patriarchy, while it is wrong and condemnable, how is it responsible for what is happening across the world? What is happening across in different other religions?
But Anand, we have to look at what's happening in India as well. No, we can't ignore that.
Yeah.
Sharanya?
Definitely. Why should we ignore India? We are Indians. We cannot ignore it. But how is Hindutva patriarchy responsible for the poor social condition of Muslim women?
But
I
that's
don't understand.
that's a separate argument. Sharanya, do you have anything to say on that?
Everything,
Sure.
you cannot go and put it in the shed of Brahminical patriarchy. There are Brahminical patriarchy is an issue. So are many other issues.
they are running the government now. They are having the complete power now. That's why we are targeting or accusing this Brahminic patriarchy or Hindutva patriarchy now.
All these issues have been there before they were in power, and they have to be, if it is there, if it is wrong, it has to be objected, which people are objecting. I am questioning the silence and the fear in not addressing, and the easy way out, the flogging the dead horse, easy way out, by saying that no, even Muslim women's problem is the Hindu patriarchy's problem. How is that? I don't understand the logic.
No. We won't say that. We won't say that.
Let's have Sharanya into the debate as well. Anand is enjoying himself.
So firstly, as Chandrika ma'am said, we need to look at who is in power right now and what are they enforcing. But I take your point, sir, that there have been and continue to be different forms of oppression. I think all feminists with an intersectional sensibility know this. And we are working on those things. But one person cannot speak for everybody or everything, which is why you need diversity of opinion. Right? We're not homogenous, as you yourself said earlier, I think. We need that diversity of opinion. But if we actually afford equal or equitable platforms so that all these different concerns are heard, I think we will actually be able to hear what people who are immersed in this work are saying. So here we are, the four of us having this debate, but there are so many voices which are not in this debate, and we are at best paraphrasing them. So we don't have, for instance, a Muslim feminist or an Adivasi feminist. We don't have so many different kinds of voices here. So I think when what you perceive as silence is sometimes not silence, it is being respectful of those other opinions and not paraphrasing, not speaking for someone else, but potentially in other ways, in our own capacity, um, uplifting those voices where we can, sharing information about the same. All of it is not going to happen in the span of 40 minutes or an hour.
Let's talk a little about men. We've talked enough about women today. Anand, let's talk about men. And
I am the scapegoat now.
no, I want to know, what are the kinds of do they suffer? Are they oppressed? Do they feel
No, no. It's a man's world now.
Mhm.
It is a man's world. I think which has to change. I don't have any difference of opinion on that.
Hmm.
Men have set the rules, especially a few men have set the rule, which is true. There is no doubt about that. And most of what we talk about now, the power, everything, has been set by a small number of people in every community.
Right.
It's not just in one community. They will get power, power will come and go. But these kind of people will continue to oppress not only women, but also other men too. That's a fact of life. And this kind of writings and other things will be a rebellion against that. That is the dharma of a writer too. That's what we have to do it too. So men, I don't think are oppressed as such. There will be individual victims of somebody. Someone might be there, but as a society, as a whole, when we talk as a whole, I don't think compared to women, men are at a huge advantage as far as the present society, irrespective of whether it is some degrees will be different, but it is constructed. There is no doubt about that.
But men, there are certain expectations of what it means to be a man, especially in India, keeping tradition in mind, keeping modernity in mind. What are those? How do you get to define who the Indian man, what would be called the Maryada Purushottoman, for instance? What would be the ideal
Maryada Purushottam is
man?
a very North Indian concept. We are all Mahabali's people. We
Thank
don't talk
God.
about Ramarajya, we talk about Bali Rajya, Mahabali's Rajya. So
What is what
I
is
won't
the
answer
difference?
that.
What is the difference between a Mahabali and a Maryada Purushottoman?
Mahabali's the fundamental difference is the equality of all, irrespective of their caste, creed, religion. That is a fundamental of thing. So that is ideal. Whether you reach it there or not, ideals are not to be cannot be reached. Very rarely they are reached, but that
Right,
is the ideal. So it is not Purushottam. It is not Purusha. Is not there.
right,
Manushottam actually.
right,
So
right,
humanity we are talking about.
right.
That's what I try to do with my books also.
Yeah.
So it is the Baliraja is the ideal as an ideal. This thing, it's a totally different concept. Which so there is no ideal man. There can be ideal human. It
Right.
cannot be an ideal man. It can be an ideal human, which can be either a man or a woman or a transgender. It doesn't matter.
So, Sharanya and Chandrika, may I ask you, do you feel that there's a regional divide in this idea of the ideal man?
All men are not equal, Kaveri.
All
Because
women also are not
there
equal.
there is hierarchy. There is hierarchy. That is the concept of masculinities.
Yeah.
There is hegemonic masculinity and the submissive masculinities according to the caste and sexuality and all. There is a huge gap between power and powerlessness among women, among men themselves.
Right.
As far as these gender relations are concerned, all men are enjoying this power with regard to kind of exploiting women. But as far as men are concerned, only men are concerned, um, most of the powerless men are exploited by this powerful men.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Now, in India, I would again say that in Hindutva India, Muslim men are very powerless.
I largely agree with that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how important is writing for you to overcome these perceptions, to overcome these sort of man-made or human-made sort of traps and prisons?
Individually and personally, it's incredibly important. But at the same time, I think that we as creators across fields have to have a sense of humility about the fact that art is not the thing that is influencing people in this country or in this world right now. What is influential? How is propaganda being created and how is it being spread? We're not in that realm at all. So I think that those of us who are committed to a better world, to fairer societies, um, need to keep that in mind. That's not to say that we shouldn't create art. We should just understand again the larger context that we are working in.
Do you think art is powerless against such forces?
I don't think art is powerless. I think that the influence that art has is more limited than we may think. And there are various reasons for this, and some of them are capitalistic reasons as well. If you look at how the publishing industry is set up, if you look at distribution networks, if you look at who gets fellowships, um, who gets awards, who gets invited to panels like this, there are so many different layers of
And
power
even,
operating,
and even
right?
social media is not necessarily as democratic as we think it is.
Social media is not democratic.
Yeah.
The internet may have been when it began. It really isn't. It's quite messy, and it's becoming more and more dangerous. So we need to keep all of this in mind as we create work and as we put it out. But no, it's absolutely, I absolutely do not think that art is powerless. But in order to be powerful, we need to see what we're up against.
We need to define the other. Is that the other? We need to define the other to redefine ourselves.
No, I cannot agree with that, because
You don't. Yeah.
the othering is why we're in this place.
Exactly.
Because there are so many others whom we have excluded
Right.
from what we consider to be right, really. So no, it's not about othering itself. It's just about
Inclusivity.
uh, yes, inclusivity on one level, allowing for diversity on another level. But also, when you create these spaces, you then see just how large the expanse of humanity is. And there has to be space in our brains and our hearts to hold all of that.
The point that there has to be space in our hearts and minds to reflect all the diversities that we see. I just love the idea of that. That's really what a writer is trying to do, isn't it?
See, I will respond to what Sharanya was also telling. First of all, the one with the best story wins.
Hmm.
It's all about storytelling.
Hmm.
So ideas are very powerful. Art, if it stops being only self-expression
Hmm.
and more into storytelling, stories can be told in a different way. Everything in the world, to really think, is storytelling. Religion is storytelling.
Hmm.
Politics is storytelling.
Politics, yeah.
Uh, Capitalism is storytelling. Communism is storytelling. Everything is a storytelling.
Hmm.
Now, who tells the best story holds the power. Always.
Yeah.
So it is on the artist to create more powerful stories to counter it. As long as it cannot be done, the one who tells the best story will always have the power. So it is very important. Art or literature is very important in the sense that artists should be consciously striving to create a better story than the one who is powerful. To
I
stand
agree.
with who is powerless is the dharma of an artist, irrespective of who he is.
Absolutely.
And to tell a better story. And naturally, what happens is a cycle. So the
Yeah.
one who tells the best story, if you will have power, then the other one will have to come up. That's how the world goes.
Unfortunately, in politics right now, some people are telling better stories than artists, and
Definitely,
perhaps,
definitely.
yeah.
They tell better stories. Unless you can create a better story than that, all these things will be in the cries in the wilderness, and nothing more than that.
I agree with you. The idea that you have to tell the story better in order to win in the public domain and to be able to surpass the one who is currently telling the best story that the majority of people are listening to.
That is the
So it's the artist's responsibility to tell the story better.
writers should tell the truth.
Hmm.
That's the best story, I would say. Truth is the
Good.
truth is the
Whose truth?
truth.
Right, the truth is the writer experiences it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Writer's experience is not other writer's experience. The truth also changes, no?
Oh no, there is only one truth.
No, there's only one truth. Now you're talking like Donald Trump. There can be only one truth. You can't have different kinds of truths.
Truth in the sense justice, based on justice and
Yeah.
injustice.
Yeah.
Writers always should stand with justice. That is the only truth, I would say.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to talk to all of you. See you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.